all of the turmoil that Mao causes, all the people when he gets in power, tens of millions of people are dying, and yet there's never a major insurgency after he takes power. There's never a coup that works.
Communists are good at this. When the North Vietnamese win, they promptly get? Famine. And in Vietnam, I think you have kind of 3 harvests. Like, how do you ever have famine in that place? But yeah, they did. This is the brilliance of communism, is this commissar system and the party system and how they set up their government. It's incredibly effective about maintaining power. It's very effective about seizing power during warfare, maintaining it thereafter, but it does not deliver prosperity. It delivers compounding poverty. Take a look at North Korea. It's a mess, but the man's in power.
I think that's a really good point. What's ironic about this is growing up in our textbook, I mean, ask any real Chinese person who was born and raised in China, who's gone through that education system, they would tell you that communism has always been branded as the party for the people. They always paint democracy and capitalism as this big evil thing because they are against people. And communism is good for you because they're for you and everybody is the same in the society. But that's such an illusion, because at the end of the day, it is the opposite of empowering its people. It is, just like the professor said, it is about the concentration of power.
Why don't the high-level officials in the CCP, after they see the impact of the Great Leap Forward, the Liu Shaoqus and the Deng Xiaopings, why don't they?
They did.
Well, he wasn't running day-to-day affairs, but in terms of making sure he's never in a position to, in the future, do the Cultural Revolution.
This is when you get Peng Dehuai, who he was the general that was in charge of forces during the Korean War, and also Long March generation. He had lost several of his siblings to starvation over the course of these civil wars, and he and Liu Shaoqi pulled the plug on Mao, and then Mao is demoted from one of his positions, and that's when you get the Cultural Revolution, because Mao is on his way out of power from these guys. So what does Mao do? Is he rallies the youth, the Red Guards. These are the children who've been educated in communist education about how wonderful the communists are and beloved Chairman Mao. So Chairman Mao tells the teenagers that they should be in charge. Think about teenagers, not much life experience, but telling them they're in charge. And then they start out by killing off their teachers, right? They have teachers they probably don't like, and it's incredibly empowering. And then they start working their way up the educational system and fan outward. And it's like a semi-civil war. And then this is when Lin Biao comes in, who is a military leader. And Mao's going to use him to restore order. But after he's ousted all the people who are going to get rid of him. So that's what the Cultural Revolution is about. And it is ruinous for production. Right, doing all this, and you're gutting your educational system. Like all the people who gave the hard grades who may have actually known something, they're gone.
Another very sensitive word in China. If you grew up in China, the word Cultural Revolution is almost a taboo. You don't want to talk about it. Nothing about Cultural Revolution is pleasant. It's far from it. And just like anything that's bad happened in our history, it's always glossed over in our textbook. There's very smart manipulation of the truth when you live in China. Things that you vaguely know, but not really. Like you only know the good parts of the history. And in this case, Cultural Revolution, a lot of people lived through it. My grandparents, they lived through Cultural Revolution. And it was horrific. People who survived that horrible situation, they don't want to talk about their trauma, because during the Cultural Revolution, if you dare to breathe a word of how bad our chairman Mao Zedong is, you're going to get publicly humiliated. When you have an authoritarian regime, just like Professor Paine said, you try to take over, but you always get crushed. And that kind of episode has been repeating in our history.
And today, look, the portrait of Mao hangs in the square, and he's like revered in a way that Hitler or Stalin aren't revered in their countries, despite killing more people. So,
well, though, I think Stalin's having a bit of a comeback with Vladimir Putin. So, and Vladimir Putin is starting to mimic more of the centralized. He's going to re-centralize his economy in ways that start looking like the old one.
When people say things like Xi Jinping is acting like Mao, how do you react knowing how Mao actually behaved?
Oh, Xi Jinping apparently reveres Mao. My understanding about Xi Jinping's education is his dad was a very high-level communist leader who was purged but not killed and sent to sort of interior north somewhere in China. And so when
Okay, a lot to unpack here, and everything she said is true. My generation, I was born in the 90s. Modern China started to reopen to the US. They say to the West, but really it's open to the US. That's essentially what it is. Oh my God, this period was glorious, and many Chinese people are so proud of what the country has done for them. But the thing is, what they did was against communism. It's not the ideology that the country is built on. We were so poor. We were devastated as a nation. People were dying of hunger. Our population was down. The leader of the time, Deng Xiaoping, and he said, white cats or black cats, as long as they catch the mouse, it's a good cat. That's just a metaphor for saying, we'll try free market. We'll try opening up to the West. I know this is not what we signed up for, but we'll try it because we need it. For the following 10, 20 years, a lot of people benefited from this. There was a little bit of free market, and there was foreign trade. People were excited when China joined WTO. I think they realized that freedom and prosperity leads to the perish of communism. The only time that people benefited and they succeeded as a nation is when they tried something different. People have more money, people have more power. They don't want the Communist Party in charge at the time.
Given the fact that he personally suffered during the Cultural Revolution, I think there's a story that at some point, because his dad was announced, and he like tried to come back to their home to get fed by his mother, and his mother had to turn him away. This happens to him during the Cultural Revolution.
Sniff.
How do you explain these these CCP officials who personally suffered during the Cultural Revolution being pro-Mao?
I mean, Stalin was abused as a child, and then he's incredibly abusive. Hitler was abused as a child. I mean, why would you expect? Well, you're so. The man, I use the word sociopath or psychopath. They both apply to him. Don't think he's going to have any tender mercies for anyone. Oh, he abandoned various sets of kids who starved to death and died. And one son, he put him right up in Korea where he could get killed, and he promptly did. So, oh, and Stalin, that was another great one. Well, the Nazis captured Stalin's son and wanted to trade him for something, and Stalin said, nah.
It's interesting because I actually remember learning about Chairman Mao sacrificed his sons for the regime. The death of his sons was branded as something that was so great that he was able to be a little sociopathic and just doesn't give a shit about his own sons. People loved him more because of that. When you live in an authoritarian regime, humanity is not encouraged. That's something that I immediately noticed after I got out of China. You really respect humanity. That's something to be rewarded. But in our culture, being able to forego that and sacrifice your relatives for the greater good, for whatever that is, in this case, obviously it's his personal power, but he wouldn't say that. He would say, like, he sacrificed his sons for you. And that's admirable. That sociopathic behavior is admirable for a lot of people.
How do people in China today think about Mao? And why aren't they more pissed off? You know, you look at these numbers.
I'm guessing, I'm not Chinese, but I think all of us need to be proud of things. And of course, one thing to be very proud of if you're Chinese is Chinese civilization. These enormous achievements in philosophy, in the sciences, all kinds of arts. It's incredible. But many Chinese also want to feel proud of their leaders. And so Mao is incredibly consequential.
Am I proud? I am proud of the people who put in the hard work and generated that wealth. Growing up in a system like that, you don't feel that you're proud of yourself. You feel like you own everything to the Communist Party because they're the one who led you there. But the thing is, we were only opening up to the West because we were closed from it. And of course, growing up, every single class, every teacher would tell you that you are nothing without the party, and the party is the one that led you there.